I'm Troy Kirby with a quick look at the 2022 Washington State legislative session. During the 2022 Washington State legislative session, lawmakers debated the issue of how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in buildings with Substitute Senate Bill 5722. The Senate heard the bill on the floor February 11th.
It is our duty to leave our kids with a world that is better than what we found it. And when we look at the work that we are doing, oftentimes I will tell them that they have to be engaged in this political process because they will have to deal with the ramifications of our actions or our inactions. And that is why I will do what I can to ensure that we can help in this space as well. And in Washington State, the two largest sectors that emit carbon emissions is the transportation sector, which we are addressing with bold action through the Move Ahead Washington package. And the second one is the building industry as well. Residential and commercial buildings account for about 27% of the emissions in Washington State. And for us to meet our statutory limits, we have to ensure that we retrofit our existing buildings as well.
And while we have made inroads and done what I call the low-hanging fruit, Mr. President, insulation, windows, doors, those kinds of things, those things have been done. Now, while I realize that the existing policy dealt with very large buildings and this steps that down, you get to the point where the diminishing returns.
And you're right, it does, and you don't have to do it tomorrow. We got 10 years to do it, but you got to do it over and over and over. So what it does without doing anything to reduce the energy used in our state until 2030 at the soonest, is it costs money. It costs money in the terms of regulation. That's what it does.
And I just want to say that certainly I understand sort of both sides of the coin here. On the one hand, we want to have a healthy, strong environment that will be safe for our children and for our grandchildren. On the other hand, we have millions of Washingtonians right now that are experiencing not only rising costs, but particularly young people, our next generation, those in my generation, that are already burdened with inflation and rising costs, and additionally are unable to purchase homes.
The Senate passed the bill 2722. It then went over to the House, where it was debated on March 3rd.
This building acknowledges that there are certain businesses that have been particularly impacted by COVID, by the shutdowns, by the cost of doing business, by the lack of customers, and just trying to recover out of the financial distress that they've been in the last 2 years. So this amendment exempts child cares, houses of worship, hospitals and urgent care clinics, pharmacies, and buildings that sell building material. Madam Speaker, I think that it seems prudent and right. The people that own buildings that provide these services, they didn't tell us to come to Olympia so that they could have more fines, more fees.
The energy use requirements of the underlying bill are cost-saving measures, particularly to tenants. And so, for example, for multifamily buildings which are removed from the bill by this amendment, many renters will benefit from having the building manager operate the building more efficiently, making better use of the HVAC system, of lighting systems.
This bill is about saving energy and reducing energy costs for building owners and building tenants. So we've heard a handful of stories about different kinds of buildings and concerns that members have about the implications in those various scenarios. Experience in Washington State with very similar programs already working here shows that in almost all of those scenarios, for almost all of those kinds of situations, we're going to see buildings reduce their energy use and save the owners and or the tenants money.
Underlying bill provides incentives, 30 cents a square foot for tier 2 construction buildings. That's an incentive for a business, a place of worship, schools, whatever it may be. It provides them incentive money. But what's so unfortunate is so many of these structures, some of them have already remodeled, Some of those structures are existing, but they're hooked into natural gas. And many of those structures are owned by organizations or small business that are barely making it right now.
So the gentlelady who proposed this amendment talked about, as we've heard on multiple occasions, houses of worship, which will be exempted with this amendment from this bill. That's an incredibly good idea. Madam Speaker, these are essential buildings.
The House passed the bill with amendments 5345. The bill then went back over to the Senate on February 8th to see if senators would concur with the House amendments.
The House, as they do, added a null and void clause, and they also pushed back the deadline for when building owners can apply for the incentives by a year, so I urge your support.
While I do concur with the changes made, it is not enough to change our vote on the underlying bill. I would ask for a no.
The Senate passed the bill 2821, sending the legislation onto the governor's office for an opportunity to be signed into law. Thank you for watching the 2022 Washington State Legislative Session.